Just when you think we're done, we're immediately back. The Process Show. Gonna take a deep look into potentially a few pitchers that we are looking at on today's slate. Plus, at the end of the show, probably the last 15, 20 minutes or so, we'll take a walk through some of the new features that were dropped upon us during the live stream last night in the beta for Fantasy Cruncher. Lots of interesting stuff to take a look at there. But first and foremost, Adam, what's going on?
How's it going, man? I'm excited to be back doing the show again.
Yeah, me too. And especially because there are a couple guys on this pitching side that I want to take a deeper look into. And I'm hoping that by the time we're done, you and I are in agreement and I don't have to play some of these guys that I don't really like.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting slate because there's at least one guy you mentioned in Giolito that I'm interested in digging deeper into to potentially play him. But there are a couple of guys that I want to dig deeper into just because I think the teams they're facing will be popular, and I'm not convinced that they're as bad as the general public thinks. So I think guys like Danny Duffy, Mike Minor are going to be guys that I'm going to really want to dig into also just to see if I really want to play bats against them or not.
Okay, those were not two names that I was thinking of, so that'll be interesting. Let's start with Giolito because he's obviously, so far, projected to be relatively popular. We're projecting 20% ownership on DraftKings. He's projected to be the highest owned value in quotes, of the day. And I'm a little nervous about it. I tried to walk through it a little bit earlier with Jake, but I think we're going to do a little bit bigger digging. Where do you stand on Giolito so far? Are you on board with his ownership?
It's scary at that ownership. Like, if he's going to be that highly owned on a 15-game slate, then obviously in tournaments, getting away from him isn't the craziest thing. But I do buy into his changes, and it obviously is a good matchup against this Detroit team. So, I mean, I do think there's upside. And on DraftKings in particular, I think that he is just a really good play. I mean, only 6,300 over there. FanDuel has him priced up to like 7,900, where it's nice because you won't see a lot of ownership on him, but obviously it's not the same appealing price tag either. But I do think he's made some, pretty significant changes that could really, benefit him long term. I don't think it's just, a blip on the radar that he's been pitching well.
Okay, I'm hoping that it's a blip on the radar. So I think that we need to go a little bit deeper. And I'll start with what my sort of thought process was. So let me pull him up on FanGraphs, and we'll take a look at what I looked at during the show with Jake, sort of lead us down a road to go dig into like Brooks baseball type numbers. So for the last, we'll say 6 games, I think I said through August 3rd, that's when Giolito seems to be turning a bit of a corner. And on the surface, some of this stuff looks good. Why is that not filtering? See, sometimes in life, things just don't work out the way I want them to. Give me August 2018. Thank you, FanGraphs. 40 Ks in 37 and a third. That's a 9.6 K per 9. Looks great. From a missing bats perspective, he's getting strikeouts in those 6 starts. He just absolutely nerfed the Red Sox, which is the one that really got me back on the, okay, maybe he's just actually turning into what he was supposed to be now. Because the Red Sox have been mashing righties all year. Here's where I'm concerned. 239 BABIP in this stretch of time. That's if we're only looking at one number, that is a sign that he may have been a bit hit lucky. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's just what it is, but it's at least a sign. I'm a little nervous about that. Batted ball data. 38.5% hard contact. That is above league average in that time. A little concerning to me. Plate discipline numbers. Swinging strike rate, 10.6%. That's just slightly above average. So I'm thinking he might not have the same stat lines as he has had over these past 6 games because he's been a little hit lucky. What happens if a few of those hits get through and he start pitching from the stretch? Things aren't going as well. So are there any thoughts that jump out to you straight away from that sort of data, and how much deeper would you want to dig into it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think those are both, valid points and where you would likely see him start to struggle, potentially going forward. The things that I looked at that make me feel a little bit better, obviously the swinging strike stuff is, it is what it is. Like he might not go out there and strike out, a million guys, but those numbers are also up, and that coincides with him throwing his changeup a lot more. And you can just see that by, going to FanGraphs game logs and looking at pitch type. So that's something that I would kind of just note. And then later on, I'll go back into Brooks and see if, I think it's a good pitch, and I'll see how effective that pitch has been and see if, that's a reason I think that he's improved. But what really stood out to me is, yeah, his BABIP is low, but if you look at his numbers as a whole this season, he's actually been pretty decent against righties. He's allowed a 331 expected WOBA, 324 actual WOBA. He really has gotten in trouble against lefties, where he's allowed a 386 expected WOBA and a 220 expected ISO. If you look since the start of August, though, where he has been better, like you said, he's only allowed a 272 expected WOBA to lefties, 285 to righties. Okay. So the expected WOBA is really low. Obviously, the BABIP is lower than we can expect him to sustain going forward, but the quality of balls being put in play against him really hasn't been bad. So even if he does move back to, like a league average 300 BABIP, I still think he's going to be good at, if he keeps pitching like he has been, he still would project to be, pretty good at keeping guys off base. And then the other thing that stood out to me, and it again makes sense with him throwing his changeup more, is for the season against left-handed hitters, he only has a 7.5% swinging strike rate. But since the start of August, he's up to about 10.5%. So you're seeing him be more effective against lefties and also get more swinging strikes. And he just, if like paying attention to him all season long, it's kind of been like, he's not terrible against righties. If he can just find a way to not get absolutely destroyed by lefties, he can be pretty decent. And it seems to me like he's found a way to do that. And then you also factor in that he's throwing harder, which, is nice. He's throwing more first pitch strikes over those 6 starts. I think like 5 of those 6 starts, he's been above his season average in first pitch strike percentage. So I still think it just seems like he's definitely gotten better to me.
Okay. Look, I think that might be the case. I don't want to just naturally chalk anything up to, his BABIP's at 250, so he's just going to be awful. The missing bat stuff, I think, is really, really interesting. It might have just taken him a while to get himself settled. He's how old? 24?
Yeah.
Barely 24. Just turned 24 last month, so 2 months ago. He's making me nervous at 20% ownership, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's scary. And as far as the swinging strike percentage being, basically league average, I'm doing a baseball savant search right now, and it's something that I'll do when I see someone's strikeout percentage, really climb, and their swinging strike stuff maybe not suggest that they're getting enough swings and misses to sustain that. I'm going to look and see where he ranks over that period of time in called strike percentage and called strike plus swinging strike percentage. Okay. Because sometimes you can kind of miss that a pitcher is just, freezing hitters or locating really well. It's something that happened with like Alex Cobb. His swinging strike percentage didn't really go up, but he's been in like the top 10 in called strike percentage for the last 2 months. So it can kind of go overlooked. So I want to double check that. And if Giolito, is like high on these leaderboards, then I'm going to put even more stock into it. If he's not, then I will kind of assume that he is better than he used to be, but maybe he's not as good as he has been.
So whoa, okay, there's the chair drop. It just happened. Every time. Can't stop it from happening. It makes me nervous to think that even if I unearth everything that I want and think, okay, I'm on board with having Giolito, at best then I'm either going to have to make an incredible stand against ownership and go double that number. It just doesn't feel like a spot where I want to be with the field. I either want to not be there at all or almost put like too many eggs in that basket.
Right. So then naturally the question that I would ask is, you start digging into the pitchers similarly priced, because if we were to decide that Giolito is a really good play, then I think it at least makes like the optimal roster construction a cheap SP2. Yeah. So I would start trying to find, okay, is there someone that is in that price range that beats him, a decent amount of the time. Trevor Richards was the first one that comes to mind, but even he's like $1,000 more expensive on DraftKings.
Yeah, so someone that I was leaning to a little bit more than Giolito on the surface is someone that's not getting any ownership, and that'd be Eric Fede.
Yep.
5,300. I think it's a pretty solid spot for him. But I don't think that if nobody's on him, then I'm less interested in digging into someone like Fede because I can pick up leverage on the field without really hamstringing myself anywhere. I can go like we're projecting him at 3%. I can go to 9 and be happy, and that doesn't really take me off of or take me out of like a Giolito for the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And Fede's cheap enough too that he really doesn't have to pitch that well to be a pretty reasonable play.
Basically, just don't die.
Yeah, exactly. And if Giolito does die and you have, you're overweight on Fede, then it's even better.
Okay, so you were talking about called strike percentage plus swinging strike percentage. Is that only in the leaderboards on Savant? Or is that something you can could see in his stats?
If you go into the StatCast search, you can go to pitch result and then go to called strike and sort by pitch percentage, and then set a minimum total of 300 pitches or whatever, and only starting pitchers. Okay. And then just get a leaderboard that way, just over the time span that you want.
Okay. I started sharing my screen with you just so you could see it as well. I haven't messed with Baseball Savant at all. Sorry, Jake. I know you own this site. You never gave me the tutorial. So we want to look at minimum amount of pitches, say something in the...
Yeah, I mean, I put it at like, 200 or 300 just because we're looking, at basically a 5 or 6 start sample size. So you want to basically filter out the starters who only threw, 1 game or 2 games. But I don't want to filter out too many starters because I want to a pretty decent sample of where he actually ranks. Okay.
Any other filters on here? I'm going to grab it and quick toss it into an Excel sheet so we can take a look at it while we're on here.
I limit it to starting pitchers as well. Obviously, using the 200 or 300 pitches kind of does that anyway over the sample size. But in general, when I'm trying to create starting pitcher leaderboards, I want to search by starting pitcher just because relievers these days have such nasty stuff that if you don't, you can get a pretty skewed board.
Is there a starting pitcher only drop down, or is this going to be something I'll see after I search?
By position. In the middle column,
got it. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, this will give us a quick chance to, take a look at some advanced data that, I would guess a lot of people aren't normally looking at. This isn't going to be the quickest search, I'm guessing.
So I have it up right now. The top... Okay, so the top 5 pitchers in called strike percentage since the start of August: Rick Porcello, Kyle Hendricks, Ryu, Rich Hill, Lucas Giolito.
Wow. Okay.
The rest of the top 10. I mean, it's guys that have been pitching
Giolito,
well. Also
5th. Yeah. I'm starting to get nervous now. I don't know what to make of this guy.
What'd you say?
I'm starting to get nervous. I don't want to use him because I don't like him.
it just sucks with guys like that. I get myself into trouble with it. Like, if I'm not on him when he first has those 2 good starts, I just kind of dig my heels in and refuse to play him until he has a bad one. And it just ends up costing me money. But now we have him, top 5 in just called strike percentage. So then I went to pitch result and clicked on swing and miss under the group select. So now you're getting his called strikes plus his swinging strikes and foul tips, and search by that. Out of 147 starting pitchers that have thrown at least 300 pitches since the start of August, Giolito comes in at 13th, right between Rich Hill and Walker Buehler.
2 guys that I would not have expected to be sandwiched there with him. Is he turning the corner? Is he going to be that guy now? I'm starting to think that
Check out this top 10. Do you have it up?
I'm working on it. So I want swinging strike and called strike.
Yeah. If you go down on under pitch result, if you go to at the very bottom where it says swing and miss, it'll just check all the different swinging strikes and then add the called strikes.
Got it.
And you get. Whenever you're creating a leaderboard too, I think, especially if you're getting creative and playing around with things, one thing to pay attention to is who are the guys at the top, or is it guys that you would expect to be there? Is it really good pitchers? And that'll just kind of back check you and, help you kind of have an idea of if you just created something completely useless or if it's actually probably good data. And in this case, the top 10 is just like a handful of absolute aces.
All right, I'm hoping this went well, and we'll have something that we could look at and sort. Oh, that gives me a lot of data, huh? I was expecting 5 columns, not 500. So maybe I didn't check something off correctly.
Whenever you pull a CSV from Savant, it gives you like every piece of information, and then you end up having to like dig into it all.
Okay, this is failing
if you just,
pretty miserably.
It should just show up if you click.
I have pitch result, called strike, plus all of the other swing and miss stuff for 2018 starting pitchers. But that's not what I'm getting when it searches. I'm just getting total pitch numbers.
Oh, okay. So go to pitch percentage. Under
pitch
pitches.
Percentage. Under pitches?
Like sort by, if you click the drop down next to sort by.
Pitch percentage.
The second one is pitch percentage.
Gotcha. See, we're going to have to do a full walkthrough of just how to use Baseball Savant. Because if I'm not figuring this out, and I'd like to think of myself as a relatively tech-forward guy, and I'm like I'm not getting it again. The only thing that's showing up under my search results are total pitches and percentage of pitches.
Trying to see how yours looks different than mine because I don't see it. Yeah, I'm not sure why yours looks different.
Jake, I need you to go ahead and bug fix your website. It sucks. Just for everybody that doesn't understand, Jake Hari, one of the fellow Awesemo.com writers and video people here, we claim that he owns Baseball Savant. He does not, but we claim that he does because he's always.
I was going to ask if he actually like had created part of it or something.
No, it was just, from the beginning he was dropping a lot of Baseball Savant related knowledge in our shows, so it just became a gimmick that he owns this.
So on your game date, like right under pitcher handedness, set that to August 1st.
Date, pitcher hand, got it.
Yeah, because right now you're just getting full season data.
It's still not giving me any.
No, you're good results. Now. So the total pitch, like the percent of pitches, the third column here, that's the percentage of pitches that they've thrown that have been called strikes plus swinging strikes.
Oh, so that's not going to be 5 different columns of all of that stuff. It's aggregating that information into just this column.
Right. And so your list is a little different than mine because you did 200 instead of 300. So like you got Trevor Bauer on there. But yeah, in general, like you see Giolito, toward the top, but the top 10 here is just such a stacked list of basically the best pitchers in baseball plus Kyle Hendricks and Steven Matz. Yeah,
Corbin, Snell, Verlander, Herman Marquez, who has been apparently the best pitcher in baseball in the past month.
He's absolutely ridiculous.
Porcello being there is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense with the way he pitches. Like when he locates, he gets a ton of called strikes. But like Porcello, Hendricks, and Steven Matz would be the guys from that list where I'm like, okay, I still don't think they're very good. But seeing Giolito, rank in this kind of company is obviously really nice, and it makes me a little bit less concerned about an average swinging strike percentage if he's just getting this many called strikes and fooling hitters potentially and locating well.
For sure. So let's think about the analog to this, because I think that I'm comfortable in saying that his ability to miss bats has dramatically changed in the past month. Like I don't have any qualms with saying that his strikeout rate looks great and all of this sort of information has been good. What do we think could be leading him to getting more advantageous contact, which is keeping his BABIP down and keeping him afloat?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I would want to look at. For one, in his case, so like I mentioned, if you go to pitch type under his game logs on FanGraphs, you're going to see that for the season he's averaged 15.9% changeup usage. But if you really look by game, over like the beginning and middle of the season, he had a ton of games where he was throwing, single digit changeup percentages and, low double digits. But then since, July 28th, so basically for his August starts, he's been above 20% in every start except one. And even that start,
Yeah.
he was at 15.5%, which is basically his season average. So we've seen he's throwing his changeup a lot. So there are a couple of things I would do. For one, I would go back into Baseball Savant and, I would see, okay, like this guy's has made improvements over this time span. It seems to coincide with him throwing this pitch more often. Has this pitch actually been really effective? So I would go to pitch type and just go to changeup over the time frame that I'm looking at. So since August 1st, and then I would just run an expected WOBA search. And my hypothesis, would be that it's been a really effective pitch for Giolito. It appears that, so he's allowed, since the start of August, he's allowed a 186 expected WOBA with a 22.5% whiff percentage on his changeup. So that gives us a reason for why, like, the pitch has been really effective overall.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would go, you can either go stay in Baseball Savant and look at the average exit velocity and the average launch angle of his changeup. Sure. I would expect that you're going to get like ground balls and weak contact most likely when it does get hit. But, obviously also just not being hit a lot. And that, like, getting in better counts can make such a difference in your batted ball data. Sure. If you're constantly behind 2-0, you're going to give up a lot of hard contact. If you're ahead 0-2, even if you don't get a strikeout, you're probably going to get much better contact. So just the fact that he has this pitch and is missing more bats and getting more strikes and ahead in counts probably leads to that. But also on Brooks Baseball, you can go in and, find the outcomes based on pitch types and, see if maybe he is getting more ground balls on his changeup or something like that.
We're at a level in baseball now where there's essentially every piece of data that you could possibly want in some form or fashion. That's crazy. It's a different game now.
Yeah, it's to the point basically where when you're analyzing a player, just ask yourself a question and then go get the answer to it. Like, just come up with a question that you think, depending on the answer, you can figure out if you really believe in something, if you believe a player is good or not, and then just go find the answer. And it's just so easy with all the data that's out there.
I'm on the same page. I think that he may be turning a corner. Everything seems to be trending in a much better direction for him. Average fastball velocity at the beginning of the season, super low compared to where he's at right now. He's at an average of 92.4 for the season. Up through May, he was in like the high 90s, low 91s. And now he's dialing it up 93.5, up to 94 in his start against Detroit. That's a big change. He's been working 2 miles an hour above, or a mile and a half above where he was previously.
Yeah.
The changeup seems to be helping him. What was that?
He's also topping out at like 97 miles an hour now compared to like 94.5 at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. I think we're at a point in time where he has adjusted his baseline.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also looking at his changeup in Brooks Baseball, if you go into the velo and movement section and go to the horizontal movement tab, you see that he basically had a completely new changeup starting in July. He's basically getting twice as much arm side run on his changeup as he was earlier in the year. And that while movement, movement isn't inherently good or bad, but when you see that it's kind of like a logic problem. Like, you see that his results have gotten much better. He has started throwing one pitch in particular much more than he was. And then you look and it coincides perfectly with this pitch just became a completely different pitch that's moving way more. It just, so much stuff points to him, actually being good.
Yeah, you can see it on my screen right now. It just fell off a cliff. Like, the line falls off a cliff, which means significantly more movement. Let's do this by game. It's going to be too hard to notice.
It's going to be like July. It'll still jump out like when it's July 8th, I think.
Yeah, it's down. And it's just, everything else is relatively steady. And then all of a sudden, he has clearly changed something about that changeup. And it has changed him as a pitcher. And I think that's This seems like way too clear of a distinction to come to any other sort of conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, you factor in, it's not like he has a bad matchup today either. I mean, he faces the Tigers.
Yeah. So
Like,
I'm
this is the
behind it
spot
now.
where
I see the spot.
yeah, it's just the ownership is what it, I mean, that's to me is the only concern, and that's something that you take into account with any pitcher, no matter how good you think they are.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about how Luke Giolito is a different pitcher all day. If he were projected at 55% ownership, we would sit here and be like, well, we're going to fade him.
Right.
Because
exactly.
So you can come to the conclusion of talent all you want, but ultimately this becomes a math problem, and talent is only as good as price.
Right.
But I think so, both of those things are in a great spot.
Right. Exactly. To me, it kind of, I don't know. I kind of think if he's going to be 20% owned at 6,300, that I would actually lean towards just being overweight on him.
That was about to be my conclusion. If he stays at 20, I mean, what's the alternative? That you give some ownership to Wade Miley or Ryan Barucki?
Right, exactly. Like, you have like Danny Duffy, Wade Miley, Eric Fede, but I just don't think that. I think Lucas Giolito is like an $8,000 pitcher right now. I think that those guys are either in bad matchups or not very good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ask for much. Now, it's even more interesting to me because we're projecting 7% aggregate ownership to the Tigers, which is tied for the top. So it's not even like you're going to get utility out of going to Giolito just because the Tigers are owned.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
If the Tigers had no ownership, then you're not gaining so much just in case he shuts them down. But here, if Giolito cruises, like, you're burning, a lot of people are burning a stack.
Right. Yeah, and that's something too. It's kind of like an added benefit from, obviously you run your projections, and like we talked about on the last show, you mostly rely on them. But it's kind of an added bonus when you do find the spot like this, because, not only does it give you an opportunity to say, like, okay, maybe he has a different baseline than I've been using, but so many people don't dig in that much, and they are still going to trust their models that say these Tigers are too cheap. Lucas Giolito sucks. So it like you said, the Tigers, even if a lot of people have figured out by now that Giolito is better and Giolito is going to be popular, there's still a good percentage of people that are just going to be, jamming in Tigers and then complaining on Twitter because Lucas Giolito shut them down.
Yeah, that would have been me like last week. So here we are. I'm liking it. I think that I have just, and this is caveat to everyone right now, you probably don't want to play Luke Giolito, because I think I'm turning the corner and going on to Team Giolito. And when he goes out there and throws an inning and a third and gives up 11 earned and 4 dongs, I'm going to delete this video so no one can prove that this happened.
2 first-inning home runs to Victor Martinez.
Aducci will hit one. Yeah, Ronnie Rodriguez will hit one, and we'll all just sit here like, yeah, of course.
At least it means
he's throwing trash. Yeah, true. That's very true. Yeah, hey, Vmart went yard yesterday, so he's still showing that he's mildly alive.
So I don't know, like, where I think Giolito actually gets interesting, and I had kind of written him off until we got around to really looking into him, but 7,900 on FanDuel, like, he's not going to have ownership there.
1% expected right now, and I don't have a ton of interest in him on FanDuel, mostly because I really do like a lot of what's at the top, and I don't think that anybody outside of Verlander isn't really at a price point that sucks. Like, I like Clevenger a lot today at 9,900 on FanDuel. That's not stopping you from doing anything really. You can still prioritize just about any stack you want. So on FanDuel, it's a little different for me. I don't think it's a problem or anything.
Right.
It's a pricing thing mostly.
Yeah. I mean, because I think Verlander's affordable on FanDuel.
Right. Like Robbie Ray's 8,700.
Right. Like, okay. Well, and like Marquez at 95. Like, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with Clevenger, like you said. And then, also obviously ownership gets spread out more on FanDuel than on DraftKings. So
you mentioned Marquez. 1% expected ownership on FanDuel. 2% expected ownership on DK. Does Coors shake you at all? Because Jake is Team Marquez today.
I mean, it shakes me just because he, for the season, has not been great at cores, and it makes sense because he's a guy that throws his curveball a ton. But I just buy into his talent so much, and actually, he's someone that I would like to look. Just kind of talking about it being a logic thing. I want to look and see what he's done in his last couple of core starts as far as pitch usage goes, because he has been very good. He struck out like 10 Pirates, and then he had a really good start his last time at cores. I'd actually be interested to see if maybe he's like throwing his fastball more, cutting back on his curveball or something.
Okay, let's do that.
I'd use Brooks Baseball for that. Well, actually, I guess the fastest way to do it would just be with Fangraphs.
Yeah, that's probably true. Splits. I should be able to get to it in the splits tool, right?
I was just going to go to the game log pitch type.
Oh, okay. Can you filter out home and away on the game log sheet?
No, but you can just you can visualize it.
I was trying to get just like the all-encompassing view.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying, right? Yeah, I would end up probably using Baseball Savant for that, or Brooks Baseball.
Here's what we'll do. Since I know how to copy and paste like the best of them, let's just dump it into Excel and take a closer look.
His curveball usage in his last home start was some of his lowest of the season. Okay, so his last 2 home starts against St. Louis. So for the season, Marquez is averaging 15.5% slider usage.
Mm-hmm.
Against St. Louis at home, he threw his slider 24% of the time. So he basically cut his curveball usage by like a third and then increased his slider usage by a lot. Against the Pirates at home, he threw his curveball about a season average percentage, but he threw his slider 27.7%, so nearly twice as often as he normally throws it. In general, he's just been throwing his slider more as well. So that's a change that would play well and make him less home road split vulnerable, I guess.
Yeah, so I've split this out now. They're in order. Road starts at the top of the screen. Home starts at the bottom. It's very different.
Oh, well, so that's for...
Did I grab Giolito? I'm such an asshole.
I was going to say, like, he doesn't throw his curveball at all.
I was looking at it, and I was just like, team. CHW. He's not on that team. Luckily, this will be a quick fix. But we can get an idea of home and away averages for this stuff pretty quickly. Pitch type. Got it. It's the only skill I have in the world.
Copy and paste. That's about all I know how to do with a computer. So
Excel is the only thing that I can do with any sort of confidence relatively quickly.
I learned VLOOKUPs within the last year, and that was like an accomplishment for me.
I will give you a lesson in the advanced version of VLOOKUPs at any point in time if you'd like it.
Awesome, yeah.
The step up is the index match.
Okay, yeah, someone told me about that, and I was just like, let me have my moment.
Yeah, that's index match is like VLOOKUP on steroids because location stops being relevant.
Okay.
So things can exist anywhere. They don't have to run from left to right.
Okay, cool.
All right. So your hypothesis was
that he probably has started cutting back on his curveball and throwing more sliders and or fastballs at home.
Very, very distinctly, I think you can say that he is throwing less curveballs at home.
Yeah. And then those last 2 starts, the Pittsburgh start was where he struck out 10. The Cardinals start was a really good start as well. And look at the slider usage there. It's, basically his highest of the season, for the most part.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's important. I mean, just to be clear for anyone listening, like that's important because when you pitch in altitude, your pitches with vertical movement become flatter and you'll see, they become less effective. And so when you're, throwing 40, 30% curveballs like he was in those early starts, it's going to just make you a less effective pitcher. But he has the stuff where if he utilizes it correctly, he would be the kind of guy that profiles very well in Coors Field because he has an upper 90s fastball and he has a hard slider. So all he needs to do is throw it, which he's finally started doing.
Yeah, he's been looking really good. In general, he's just been mowing people down. Comically high strikeout numbers.
Yeah. Like I'd been playing him outside of Coors pretty much all season long, and that had been going really well. But I had been staying away from him in cores, and now I think it's the time to just stop doing that and play him pretty much every day.
Yeah, 26% K rate on the season. Last two starts, 46 and 37.5. Even his start against Atlanta on August 19th, 17.9% K rate is essentially league average. So if that's your downside, the upside is strikeout upon strikeout upon strikeout.
Yeah, and then you also have an injured Giants team today. Like Brandon Belt's questionable, Duggar's on the DL, McCutchen's not there anymore.
Yeah, I was like,
Cozy's out.
I was like, McCutchen. Oh yeah, gone. Yankees. Yeah. Okay, so then is the answer to his low ownership simply he's in core so people avoid him, or is there something we're missing?
I think it's just so you have him in cores, and then you have him at an elevated price tag. So people still, I mean, you're going to look and it's like, okay, Marquez is 9,300 in Coors Field. Like, do I want to pay close to 10K for a pitcher in Coors? And people are just going to say no. Like on FanDuel, obviously it's easy because you only roster one pitcher.
Yeah.
So people are going to just play Verlander or, whoever. But, on DraftKings, I think on DraftKings, like it's really, really interesting because Verlander is relatively expensive. Like you get a $3,000 discount going from Verlander to Marquez, and Marquez has just as much or close to as much upside in terms of raw points.
24% expected ownership for Rich Hill, $10,000 on DK.
Marquez is such a better play in tournaments.
32% expected ownership to Robbie Ray. He's at 8,900. Marquez sandwiched in between 2% expected ownership, 9,300.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm playing DraftKings today, but I might have to because that's just too good of a spot to not play.
So who would you lop out of that?
Robbie Ray. Assuming that what did you say Ray's ownership was?
Ray at 32, Rich Hill at 24. Just in case this matters to you, then Verlander at 41, but Marquez at 2.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's actually tough between Ray and Hill. Like Hill, I think's the much better pitcher. I'm just like a sucker for Robbie Ray. I like the strikeout upside so much, but he just doesn't throw strikes ever. And on DraftKings, I think I would get rid of Ray before I got rid of Hill, just because it's a whip site and Ray's expensive enough now. Like it was one thing when he was $7,500, $8,000 and could absolutely break a slate, but for him to like really end, if you don't have Robbie Ray at $9,000. He has to be really, really good to end your night. Like he would have to go for 30 plus, and Marquez would have to suck. So I think there's less risk in fading Ray here, and there's more upside because most of the time, even if he gets a lot of strikeouts, he's gonna be inefficient with his pitches. So he's not going to go deep into a game. He's going to put guys on base because he can't throw strikes. And then there's the chance that Hunter Renfroe or Myers or Reyes or Hedges or whatever hit home runs off of him. So I would take Ray out first, then I would take Wood out. I would play Marquez over both of them, though.
I think that I'm going to end up on more Marquez. I think that just spending, 2.5 hours talking to you and Jake is going to completely change the way that I approach this slate.
Yeah,
I think I'm okay with that.
What'd you say?
I think I'm okay with it.
And also, if you play Marquez, the more Marquez you play, the more Giolito you can play.
That's very true. Well, I already had a ton of Rich Hill and Ray, and so my main move right now is Mike Clevinger. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get there. What are your thoughts on Clevinger today? 11,000. He's the guy. He was my Marquez today before we got into Marquez.
I haven't looked at Clevinger yet, but I'm always inclined to love Clevinger. He was just like when he first came up last year, I jumped on him like immediately, and it was a lot of fun for a while. He's another one though that like once he gets really expensive, it gets kind of hard for me just because he tends to be inefficient. And like so much has to go right for him to give you that monster game. Like he gives you a lot of 22 to 26 point games.
Yeah.
But so much has to go right for him to give you like a 30, 35.
That's a really good point. I loved just from the Steamer strikeout percentages for the Royals projected lineup. Gordon 24%, Hunter Dozier 31%, O'Hearn 28%, Mondesi 27%, Brett Phillips 35%, Clevenger's been good against righties and lefties from a strikeout perspective this year. So that was the first thing that I looked at. He was at 10% ownership, Verlander at 41. I didn't think that there was a 4-1 likelihood that Verlander was just going to blow Clevenger out of the water at that point. So my first stand was having more Clevenger.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where it gets dicey for me is just him versus Marquez. I mean, I think Marquez is the better pitcher. I think obviously the Royals suck and they strike out a lot, but the Giants suck too. And so basically, to me, it just comes down to like, do I want a more talented pitcher in a worse park, or do I want, Clevenger against Kansas City, not in Coors Field at a premium?
Pitching at the top, man. Verlander, Clevenger, Happ, Hill, Marquez, Ray, I think there are interesting no ownership to J.A. Happ. We're not going to have time to get into J.A. Happ, but I think that I accidentally like J.A. Happ today too. At no ownership.
I can always get behind Happ when he's not going to be that popular.
Great ballpark. Going into Oakland, he's had really solid success against righties this season. And, Oakland is going to be forgiving. There's so much foul ball area. I think that he can be relatively efficient. Again, it's a price thing. At 10-4, what does he have to do? Is he more likely to kill me than save me at that point? Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like taking pitchers. Oakland's just one of those teams that I love taking Oakland bats, and I love taking pitchers against them because so often, like, one of those sides is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's like the highest price point that I'd be willing to go to for Happ. Yeah. But I kind of think that who's projected to be higher owned between him and Clevenger? Because that would be like my tiebreaker between
Happ and Clevenger?
Yeah.
Happ is at 0.
Okay.
Clevenger at 10.
Yeah, so I'm like, I guess I would take Happ in tournaments just because I think that obviously it's a more dangerous matchup against Oakland, but there's still strikeouts there, and if you're still going to get somewhere between like 8 and 10-1.
Yeah, this is feeling like a spot where Verlander. I mean, he's kind of in a different boat because his upside is unparalleled, I think.
Right.
But you've got Verlander, Clevenger, Happ, Hill, Marquez, and Ray. Marquez, 2%, Happ, 0, Clevenger, 10. I mean, I think that you could easily invert all of this ownership. Give the 41% of Verlander to whichever one of these guys you'd like, and make Clevenger, Happ, and Marquez your personal chalk. And I don't think that's a crazy proposition at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, you can make strong arguments for all these guys. Verlander's the one expensive guy who is scary to fade because he can actually go out there and give you like 50 fantasy points, but obviously he's not going to do that very often, and he is more expensive, and he's going to be the highest owned. So if you play this slate a bunch of times and you are underweight on Verlander and overweight on the other guys, basically taking the field against Verlander, you're going to win a lot more than you're going to lose.
Jake and I touched on something similar to this during the show. If an expensive stack pops off that even has like slight interest, we're projecting the Red Sox to be largely unowned, but if we look at somebody, whether it's the Rockies or the Angels, teams that have relatively high price points, if they go off, more often than not, like, they're not going to have Verlander in that stack.
Right.
So yeah, what you're really trying to avoid is like Tigers going off or the Giants and Coors going off.
Which you also, it works out because you have Marquez and you have Giolito, so you're at least leveraging against those teams.
Right. Because taking Verlander is naturally putting you onto some sort of cheaper priority stack.
Right.
And that's really the bullet that you need to dodge. Because Verlander can pitch well, but if that stack doesn't go... I didn't hear what you said.
The Dodgers are another one that I think you can pay up for, and you'll end up being kind of different.
Yeah, can we talk about how they're like not owned today?
It's gonna be. I mean, I haven't gotten Jason Vargas right all year. Like, I roster the guy and he sucks. I take hitters against him and he strikes out 12.
Yeah,
but yeah, the Dodgers. It's just I'm really interested to see their lineup too because Vargas is actually bad against lefties.
Yeah.
So if they put like Cody Bellinger in there, he's probably going to be like my favorite tournament play on the slate.
Yeah.
Especially 2,800 on FanDuel.
We have Brian Dozier projected for 14% ownership. We have Matt Kemp projected for 8. No one else higher than 4.
I get Kemp's been, relatively bad lately compared to what he was earlier in the season, but um, that's still too low, I think.
Yeah, it's nobody has outlandish implied totals today. It's the Rockies at 5.4 and everyone else under 5.
Yeah,
I'm going to bet on the right-handed talent against Jason Vargas.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and especially, I know Lugo pitched yesterday, which obviously is really nice because the Mets are frustrating when you stack against them because their bullpen as a whole is really, really bad. But then they just have like two of the best relievers in baseball that they use when the game's close. But Lugo and Gisellman both pitched yesterday, so that's a plus for the Dodgers too.
Well, if I win a lot of money today, I have you and Jake to thank. And when I get back only 20% of my buy-in, I'm going to cancel this show and my morning show.
Yeah. I'll be muting Slack notifications as soon as Marquez give up their first inning home runs.
So we touched on a few pitchers that we're interested in today, but I think that we absolutely have to do a little bit of a walkthrough here. Yesterday, during our live stream, Dave from Fantasy Cruncher dropped in and dropped a bomb on us. Very new features in the beta. And I'm going to walk through a couple of them quickly and show how they impact you. You can now upload your own personal columns when uploading your projections. So before, you were able to upload player name, your projection, and your personal exposures. Now, we can blow that up. You can add in projected ownership. You could add in multiple sites worth of projections and do individual crunches for multiple sources. It's not just my projections any longer. If you have other sites that I am not going to name right now, you can add those into Fantasy Cruncher easily and aggregate a bunch of them. If you want to use 50 lines that you crunch from Awesemo projections, 50 from Fantasy Cruncher, and 50 from insert other site here, you can have 3 different sources put together your 150 if you're maxing a tournament. But the most interesting piece of all of this, I think, is the ownership part of it. And I'm going to show you guys what I mean here. So I've changed my import a little bit. It used to just be the things that I needed to project, but now I'll have everything, including my own personal randomness on an individual player, which is going to take a much deeper video than the next 10 minutes, and our projected ownership. This allows you to do one of two things. You can either build out a cash lineup in a situation where you normally weren't able to do it easily. I don't think a lot of people that play cash only would have been doing a lot of work in Fantasy Cruncher. This has always been more of a, this is the tool for people playing a lot of lineups. And I think this feature flips that on its head. You can set a maximum amount of ownership to your lineups in Fantasy Cruncher if you want to make sure that you're not getting, 8 hitters that are 6% owned or less. You now have the ability to corral your data into whatever sort of system you want it to be. If you want to make sure that you're extra chalky in tournament lineups, you could crunch out 150 lines and guarantee that you don't have anybody in those lineups owned more than 5%, which is bonkers to me. I can't even understand how he just rolled this out and was just like, hey, check this stuff out.
That's awesome.
So I have crunches here. They're supposed to be doing some maintenance, so I'm hoping that I'm able to show everybody what's going on here. I had it up, and now I think we're losing it. Let's test it out. So I'll do the walkthrough now. For those of you that aren't familiar with Fantasy Cruncher, this is all going to look new. For all of you that are familiar with it, this is where it'll look a little different. In the upload data section, we have player name, projection, exposure, randomness. You can add your own columns now. Name them whatever you want. It will eat that data and put it into a column in the data source. So I'm going to add expected ownership, and I'm going to add all of the projections for DK right now. At least I'm going to try. This would be my guaranteed way to build a cash lineup now. If I wanted to put just one lineup into a tournament, I would crunch out 150 lines with a certain threshold for the amount of ownership that I wanted to have, and then I would start chipping away at it. deleting lines where I don't like it, or focusing on a specific team that I wanted to go to. I don't think that you can build a lineup easier unless you're using Awesemo.com's lineup builder tool, which is going to give you a different view of this, but similar story nonetheless. Got to still plug our tools. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, and ours has like the chalk too, right?
It does. It does. We do a calculation to tell you how much more contrarian you will be than average. This is going to be strictly based on Alex's rankings and our ownership projections. Once this is done uploading data, we'll be able to take a look at this. Yeah, Dave was just like, hey, go to beta and do this right now.
I think it was like, what was it, last week that you asked for a way to just upload all your randomness at once?
It was, and now it's just here. And that's what I thought he was trying to show me, and I was so excited. I was like, oh, cool. I've been looking for this. This is turning into not the... Okay, I'm not able to... I think what they're doing right now is breaking me trying to show this to everybody, because it's not popping up the... It's not maintaining my upload data, so I'm ruining this for everybody. I don't have anything new. This was supposed to be the big... it's supposed to be the big thing, but this is let the wind out of my sails. We're going to do a very deep dive on this. I'm going to do a video strictly with how to use Fantasy Cruncher, how to use it to set your own individual randomness on individual players. So that was something that you and I had talked about, where I'd like to have more variance around hitters that hit more home runs. So I use ISO as some sort of weighting as a proxy for standard deviation, but essentially as a proxy for randomness. And now I'm going to be able to see how chalky and non-chalky my lineups are. You can sort by the total expected ownership. So if you want to throw away a fully chalk line for your GPP stuff, like, you can do that really easily now. I wish that I could show you more, but it appears that the maintenance that is going on Fantasy Cruncher is not going to allow me to do that. But we will take a look at it potentially tomorrow with myself and Laffy. So since we can't mess around with Fantasy Cruncher anymore, are there any other pitchers or hitters you'd like to take a deep dive on? Anybody that stood out to you that wasn't getting any steam, or anybody that was getting some steam that you think this is ridiculous?
No, I mean, I think for me, Marquez and Giolito were the two really interesting guys that I would have interest in playing and wanted to dig into. Yeah, other than that, it's just kind of, like I mentioned, like Duffy and Minor just are guys that I would look at just to try and see if I actually want Indians and Angels, but I'm not looking to play those guys. Yeah, I mean, Marquez and then Giolito were the two guys that I was really interested in looking at.
Okay, and you said you were probably not playing DK tonight?
I think I might be now. I had been planning on just playing FanDuel, but after talking about Marquez more, I think I might play some over there too.
Have you generally been just FanDuel?
No, normally I'm actually just DraftKings. I've just had a rough month, and I was like, okay, I need to change something just mentally.
I've been getting slaughtered on DK, and FanDuel has been like my cash cow for the year. And I'm slowly at the point where I want to just say, I'll see you in 2019 DraftKings baseball.
Yeah.
It's very dramatic, to the point where it has me questioning everything that I do on the back end.
It's definitely just different. And normally I have more success on DraftKings, which is why I normally play there more. But yeah. It's
as if FanDuel got weirdly softer somehow.
Yeah, and also just kind of looking at stuff, I've liked it more lately just because their tournaments are smaller, and as weird as that sounds, obviously it's just easier to take them down.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that mini-max on DK, not that that's... that has been the bane of my existence for the entire season. I desperately want to win that tournament, and I'm running out of days.
I won it in golf, and then I hit $1 million in buy-ins the next week, so I haven't been allowed to play it since.
Yeah, I won't be. I don't think I'm anywhere remotely close to that.
But it was really frustrating because, like we had talked about before, I'm new to actually consistently playing, max lineups.
Right.
And so I was using it because honestly, I know I have a ton of leaks, and I'm like, this is a nice way for me to, do it and work on stuff. Yeah. And then it's okay, never mind. Got to play $1,200 in this tournament. Yeah. My leaks now.
I wish that FanDuel had a tournament in between the quarter and the $4.
Yeah.
They could really use a mini max, or even they have I think it's the beanball that's at 222, but that's only a 25 max. They're really missing a chance at like a 150 max, which I think would fill no matter what. So I'm surprised that they don't have it.
Yeah, especially because normally the sites are pretty good about copying what the other one does pretty quickly.
Yeah, and like obviously the mini max has been incredibly successful to the point where they're usually running 2 a day. So
yeah,
I'm surprised that FanDuel hasn't made that move to add a 150 max in between. I mean, the difference between a quarter, like you could either max enter 150 lines for $37.50 or $660.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense that there's no middle ground there.
Yeah, like they're not even comparable players. Those are two dramatically different tournaments.
Granted, it's better than what DraftKings offers if you can't play the mini max though.
True.
Which is another reason I've been playing on FanDuel more. But
yeah. Oh, well, yeah, you're either, I mean, if you want to play 150, you're either playing $150, unless it's Thursday and you're playing $75 because it's the 50-cent mini max.
Yeah.
Or you're going all the way up to what, the 8?
Yeah, the 8 or it's 10 now, like half the time.
Oh, yeah, like it's just this dramatic jump of, okay, I think that I could do this. I've got a good handle on it. What's my next level? How do I do this? Oh, right. Cool. I need $2,000 every day. Yep. In addition to what I was doing before. Great. Because it's not like you want to take that step up and stop playing what you were playing before. Things were going well. You want to continue. I mean, everybody wants to play at the lowest dollar amount that they can because you should, in theory, have the highest ROI. They should be the softest games to beat. You don't want to you don't want to go from one tournament to the other. You're probably going to have a rude awakening. Just my thought.
Yeah.
I want to mash everything that I can touch until they tell me you got to get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, you have to rip that Band-Aid right off. If you're not comfortable, like if you just got comfortable maxing that $37.50 in the quarter and you've had like an 80% ROI in the season, you're like, all right, I'm ready to take the step. It's just like, okay, you remember that $37.50? You need 3 weeks worth of entry fees just to enter it today.
Yeah.
Come on, FanDuel. Maybe that should be the new thing. I'll complain about something. FanDuel's going to reach out in like 3 days and be like, hey, we created a $151 tournament for you.
Yeah.
Because it worked for randomness on Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah, I mean, you're solely responsible for all the new Fantasy Cruncher stuff.
Exactly. No one else is responsible for any part of that except for me. I want that to be the narrative moving forward. Anything else you want to touch on today? Anybody, like, what do you think of Liriano, Chuck, just before we get out of here? 14% expected ownership to Francisco Liriano today.
Wait, what? He's gonna, oh my God. I like the White Sox a lot. From a bats
perspective or just as an anti-Liriano play?
Both. I mean, I think Tim Anderson's a good play. I love stacking against Liriano in this bullpen because he walks so many guys. He's not great at holding runners. The bullpen's bad.
3% aggregate ownership for the White Sox, essentially league average. The only two people projected to get any ownership on both sites, Tim Anderson, Matt Davidson.
Yeah, I mean, those are obviously the two really good plays. But yeah, I don't know. I think I like the White Sox anyway because they're cheap and I think have a lot of upside here. But if Liriano is going to carry ownership, then I like them even more.
What's the total salary on the White Sox right now? 35.
On DraftKings, the most expensive hitters are 4,400.
Yeah. I was just trying to see how they compare to. So the Tigers have more than double the aggregate ownership of the White Sox. And I was just trying to think of, like, could you get to the White Sox instead and still try to do the exact same thing? And it'll be pretty close. They're just slightly more expensive. Castellanos at 4,300. And they've got a lot of, like, mid-threes guys, whereas the White Sox are more low fours. But, yeah, like, I would much rather have a stack against Liriano's 14%.
Yeah, Liriano's one of those guys that I'll play him. Like I played him, 9% or something against the Yankees, where I didn't like the spot, but pitching sucked on the slate, and I knew the Yankees were going to be really popular. But he's just not good, and he's one of those guys that it sucks too, because like you would really only consider him on the 2-pitcher sites, but the two pitcher sites take away points for walks and hits, so it makes it so much harder for him to have a good outing.
So I guess Liriano is the main pairing to Verlander, but there are 30 pitchers tonight. I mean, if we want to get technical, there's probably more like 27 if we drop off guys that are definitely not available. Like I'm not going to have any Liam Hendricks type stuff, relievers that aren't going to go, but I can't imagine wanting Liriano on purpose outside of the fact that the White Sox just strike out like crazy. But it's not like Liriano still has Liriano stuff. This is right. It's not 10 years ago Liriano.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine not finding $1,400 to get to Giolito.
Exactly. Exactly. You'll figure it out. Just one punt is all you need.
Especially on this slate where it's not like there's, a bunch of 6.5 implied run totals where it's like, how am I not playing these guys?
Yeah, that's what's really interesting. I read this off to Jake, but I'll do it again here just for reference sake. We have 8 teams at either 7% or 6% aggregate ownership. Those are all the high. Angels, Rangers, Tigers, Cardinals, Giants, Pirates, Rockies, Indians. All these teams with very, very similar expected ownership. That's really insane to me. No one's separating from the pack. It makes sense from an implied total perspective. Everybody is in a similar area. I think there's going to be value out there to taking a stand on teams that are in better matchups. I think the public is too flat right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I just don't know. I mean, we're projecting no ownership to the Red Sox. That's obviously a team I'm going to have a ton of. Yeah. I don't understand that at all.
Like, I have a lot of respect for Sean Newcomb, but it's still not a spot where, like, I mean, it's just such a good spot to be. Anytime you can be on the Red Sox when they're low owned, and Newcomb is good, but he's not like good enough that I'm going to be scared to take the Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, I expect these numbers to change and all these Red Sox guys to get in like the 8 or 9% individual range, but most of them are at 0, 1. Weird numbers. I just want Xander Bogaerts as a shortstop a decent amount of the time against a lefty when the Red Sox have a 4.7 run implied total. I don't care who the lefty is.
Right.
There's just too many righties and too many good hitters for Newcomb to just cruise through this. Although I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking that for lefties against the Red Sox all season, and they continue to be a league average team.
Yeah, away from Fenway and against lefties, it's been just like a completely different offense. And
I can't begin to understand why, because it's not as if these guys are like kind of okay hitters. They're like an all-star team.
Yeah. I mean, I keep expecting it to change. Hopefully by like the end of next year.
Yeah. Well, I'd like it to change tonight if I continue to have 11% aggregate and we project 1.
Yeah,
I'd like it to change immediately. Sorry, Braves. I apologize to my Braves fandom, but
Braves are another one too that I think they just have so much upside against a guy like Porcello, who, if his command's not perfect, he's going to get lit up here.
Yeah. So this would be a good situation to think about, like the inverse of what we were talking about before. No one's really on the Braves, and no one's really on Porcello. So right. I rarely get to spots like that for either fading the pitcher or the opposite, because I'm not picking up enough. Like if Porcello is only 4% owned or 5% owned, I don't need more than a line or two of hope Braves stacks. I don't want to go to someone that's not getting the ownership. I'd rather try to leverage somebody like Francisco Liriano.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, guys, another process show in the books. I learned how to use Brooks Baseball and Baseball Savant more so than I did previously, and that is going to continue over and over again. Apologies for the lack of Fantasy Cruncher beta breakdown. I'll just blame Dave. Just kidding, Dave. You dropped the biggest bombshell on us yesterday. I wasn't ready for it. I tried to manage it as much as I could on the live stream, but we will do a much deeper dive in the near future. Adam, you got anything else you want to plug or anything interesting going on? Deeper dive today?
Yeah, deeper dive at 5 o'clock with Lofty and myself.
There you go. Myself and Chris will be live at 6 p.m., finishing off and taking us all the way up until lock. But best of luck, everybody. We are going to be doing, I don't have the details totally, but we'll talk about it more in the live stream tonight. We're going to have a a contest where we're giving away a free all-access month to awesemo.com. It's going to be a thing where we'll have to guess somebody's fantasy points or something in the comments section of the video, and whoever's closest is going to get a free month. So pay attention to that tonight during the live stream with myself and Chris for all of the details on the giveaway. And we're going to do more giveaways moving forward. Giveaway like a free week subscription, stuff like that. So you got to pay attention to the videos to get this stuff, people. Otherwise, we're not giving you anything for free. Best of luck, everybody, tonight. We will talk to you again tomorrow.